Well, it's getting to the crafter's favourite time of year, and in this little video I'm going to show you how I made these two beautiful Christmas stockings that were from a panel. The Christmas panel was from Nutex, and it has 4 different stocking shapes on it. Helpfully, the panel doesn't give you any instructions at all, so I'm showing you here how I made them. First of all, I'm cutting out around the stocking outline. I'm leaving about 1 centimetre of the white so that I've got a seam allowance, so I don't really cut into the design. The stocking panel features the 4 stocking prints, and that's a back and front of each stocking, so one of the Santa one and one of the little reindeer one. Although if you want, you could back them with just some plain fabric and you could get 4 stockings instead of 2. As you can see, I was quite careful with the cutting out, but as I'm holding this up, you can see around the edge about approximately the centimetre of the white that I've left for the seam allowance. To give the Christmas stocking some bulk, you're going to need some wadding. So I'm using some wadding that I had left over from a quilt, and I've laid the stocking shape onto it. I'm just cutting it out around it. At this stage, it won't matter if the wadding that you've cut out is slightly bigger than your stocking shape. You can use basting spray or pins to hold it all together, but I'm afraid I'm really lazy and I just put it on and cut round it, and it still seems to work okay. So here it's all cut out, and you can see I've got the wadding and the stocking. Although I'm going to line the stocking once it's finished, I like to use a little bit of muslin on the back so that I'm not quilting directly onto the wadding and clogging up my sewing machine. So I've just got some really fine muslin here, and I'm doing the same again. I've laid the stocking shape on and I'm cutting around it. So now I've got all 3 layers together. I've got the stocking right side up on the top, the wadding in the middle, and then on the back I've got the fine muslin. So I'm going to put all 3 layers together. People have different ways that they hold their quilt sandwich together, and for me, I like speed, so I'm going for these little clips. They're called either wonder clips or magic clips or just quilt clips. So I'm just clipping it around the edge with these they're like little pegs really. But again, this is where you could use your basting spray or your pins, or you could even baste or tack it together. But I'm quite lazy and I'm just going for speed, so that's why I'm using these clips. I've got 2 different sizes, and I've gone for the slightly longer ones for this, so they hold a bit more into the fabric. I have little small ones as well, which I use on quilt binding. So there you can see there's the muslin on the back, and I'm just smoothing it out. So I've finished on the cutting table, and now I'm over to my sewing machine. I'm going to quilt the 3 layers together. For quilting something like this, I quite often use a serpentine stitch. I'm not sure if that's what it's called, but that's what I call it. It's like a sort of wiggly line, and I find it very forgiving. It's not so obvious if you've not gone in a totally straight line. And it also gives a really nice effect once it's all finished. How you quilt this is up to you, but I've gone for my wiggly line in about 2 centimetre spacing. I didn't measure it exactly, I just did it by eye. I used a thread that blended in really well, so it's not so obvious. So you need to do the back of the stocking in exactly the same way. So now I'm assembling the stocking and I'm putting the two quilted portions right sides together so that on each outer edge is the muslin. I'm using the clips to hold both the edges together again, so I'm going all the way around with the long clips. You might be able to see that my stocking shapes aren't exactly the same size, but that's not going to matter because I'm going to trim them all once it's sewn together. Each time I go to put the clips on, I smooth it out to make sure I've not got any creases or tucks in the fabrics. And here are the right sides facing. So now I'm going to sew all the way around the edge. You can just see I've done it about maybe 1 or 2 centimetres in. Obviously I've left the top open, but I've gone all the way around. I'm just showing you with my pencil. There we go. So you can put your hand in at the top and it's like an inside out stocking. Turn it the right way around to make sure you've caught all the seams and you don't have any little gaps. So you can see it's already starting to take shape. And now I'm going to turn it back inside out again so that I can start to put the lining bit together. Make sure you properly poke out all the little seams. So for the lining fabric, I've chosen Dashwood Twist and I've drawn one stocking shape and now I'm doing the other. And why I've put it on like this, so I've put them wrong sides together, is to make sure I get two stocking shapes facing different ways. Otherwise you'll have one lining side the right way and one the wrong way, which is what I did the first time I did this. Once you've got the lining shapes, you need to be putting them right side together and you need to sew round the edge like you did before on the main stocking. But this is the same as doing a lining for a bag. You need to leave a gap so you can turn it all the way through when it's finished. And here I'm marking the gap. I like to leave a good 10 or 12 centimetres. There you go, you can see how I've marked it. So I'm not going to stitch that bit. I'm going to stitch around the edges and leave a gap there. So again, it's open at the top and there's my gap ready for turning. Now it's time to put the lining inside the main stocking. So what you need to do is you need the lining turned the right way around. Again, just make sure you poke out all the little seams. Sometimes when you sew a curve, like you can see here, it's a bit puckered and I'm not really happy with that. So sometimes I snip into the seams. So I'm turning it back inside out again. I'm going to look for the little curve. I'm going to snip into the seam, being careful not to get into the stitching. Maybe 3 or 4 little cuts, just tiny little cuts, and this will stretch the curve out so that it won't look puckered when I turn it the right way around again. And you can see that looks much better this time round. So now I'm putting the stocking together. So I still got the body of the stocking inside out, and I've got the lining the right way around. I'm going to push the lining inside, so you end up with them being right sides together. Then I try and line up the seams so that it sits nicely inside the stocking. So just find the two seams and I just put a little clip on those to try and keep them together. And you can see here that the two right sides are together. There's the pattern and there's the lining. And I'm putting my little clips on. Honestly, I don't know what I'd do without these. I use them for everything. And now I'm just putting clips all the way around the top, trying to make sure the lining, all the edges are all together at the top, so the lining and the stocking body. And as you can see, I've put all my little clips around and it's ready to take over to the sewing machine. This is the same process as if you were lining a bag, really. So I'm going to stitch all the way around the top of the stocking, possibly about 1 to 2 centimetres in, making sure that I catch all the layers as I go round. And I like to do this quite steadily and carefully to make sure I don't get the fabric bunching up. I always use Aurifil thread when I'm quilting, and for this one I've used Aurifil 50 weight, which you can see on my machine. It's got an orange inner, and I use this one's a creamy colour. I think it's 2000. And it's a really good colour to blend in with lots of different other colours. So now I've stitched all the way around the top of the stocking. I'm going to turn it the right way round now. So first I'm pulling out the lining, and then this is where you made that little turning gap. I'm going to put my hand in there and pull the main bit of the stocking all the way through. So it can be a bit of a wriggle. So that's why I like to leave at least 10 or 12 centimetres so that I can squeeze it all through. I really like this bit. It's where you can see what you've actually made and see how it's all turned out. I think it will come out eventually. It's just taking a bit of prizing to get it all the way through. There we go. So now what you need to do is push the lining back inside the stocking. You will eventually need to close up the turning gap, but I like to make sure everything's done before I do that so that I can make any alterations if I've missed a bit. Once the lining's nicely inside, I like to just straighten up the edges, and then you're going to top stitch all the way around. I just think this makes it look a little bit neater and holds it together better as well. You can see here that I'm being quite lazy and not using my pins, and I just like to adjust it with my hands as I go, but you might want to use pins if you're a bit more fussy than me. I think I'm just rushing through these. So there we go. So there's my line of top stitch all the way around to hold it together. And now that I'm happy with how the stocking is, I'm going to close the turning gap. So I just fold the raw edges in, and I just whiz a line of running stitch along there with my machine just to hold it shut, because it is going to be inside after all. I'm not really going to see it. Now the stocking's finished, and here you can see the other one that was on the panel, the little deer. I want to make a hanging loop, So from the leftovers from the lining, I've used 2.5-inch strips, and I've just folded it double, and I'm going to just sew it onto the inside of the stocking there. And you can obviously make the loop any length you like. I've made quite a short one there. And if you didn't want to use fabric strips, you could always use some nice Christmas ribbon. So these two stockings were made using one Nutex Christmas stocking panel and about 1/2 metre of Dashwood twist in chili. And if you've got any questions, just leave them in the comments for me. Thank you for watching.